open our forum.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I wanted to tell you, my name is Karen Shue, and this is Terry Morecourt. We're from the lovely town of Vernon, right next to you. We both had volunteered to moderate this forum because we're very partial to town government and very partial to our neighbors. So we're here as volunteers, and we have no bias whatsoever, but just wanted to let you know where we're from. If you need to know our credentials, we'd be happy to provide them to you after the forum. But I want to thank each and every one of you for coming and showing your interest in your town. It's a great display of how passionate you feel about your government. With that, we're going to set the timer so that that's all correct, and we're going to have Angie begin with her opening statement. Angie will let me know as soon as we're ready, all right? Okay. And if anybody can't hear, if you could raise your hand just so we can accommodate that, all right? Thank you.
Okay. Whenever she's ready. Whenever you're ready.
Okay. Tomorrow is election day. The outcome of this election will be pivotal, and in my opinion, the future of the town of Waukesha will be changed forever by your decision. As you know, much has been said about the town-related issues by others in the last few months. Some true, most not. My husband David and I have lived in the town for almost 30 years. We have never seen an election like this one. Yesterday's illegal antics included placing signs next to mine on private property that said, "The Liberals' Choice," in a county with the highest percentage of Republican voters in Wisconsin. This is a non-partisan elected position. I'm a fiscal conservative. So to the question, is the hoopla because of personality conflicts? No way. There has been a protracted effort to discredit me in order to change leadership and direction in this town through the election. Why? The availability of our land and our water resources are at stake. The city of Waukesha and the local developers have salivated over the easy pickings of our town forever. That changed with the election in 2010. We know we should be in charge of our future, and now we are. A simple example is the decision on the water service area, which creates a border limiting further annexation of town lines into the city. My opponent, a local real estate developer, favors including the entire town. His position just revealed last week Sunday. I am who I have always been, a tireless advocate for the town of Waukesha. Fear-mongering is the most recent attack, attempting to discredit the work done over 2 years to set the water service area boundaries. We've worked closely with the DNR during this time, educating ourselves on this complicated decision. We are not putting our friends and neighbors at risk like my opponent likes to spew. In fact, just the opposite. We are in control of our future, no longer being controlled by those who profit by our losses. We have options available to us that do not include being in the clutches of the city of Waukesha Water Utility. They just like to think we need them. We don't.
Jen, just a minute.
Okay.
First of all, thank you all for being here tonight. We've been in the newspapers a lot these last few years, from a dysfunctional board to our cyber supervisor, a failed septic system gone unrepaired, or our chairwoman chasing down plow trucks. That type of leadership has made the town of Waukesha the laughingstock of Waukesha County. It's time to restore integrity and leadership to the town. To accomplish this, we need to do the following. We need to treat the town board members and town residents with courtesy and respect, particularly when they don't share our views. We need to restore our right to obtain municipal water and sewer service for those who will need it in the future. The current decision limiting those rights has and will continue to directly, negatively affect the value of our homes. You see, it's not just about the quantity of water, it's about the quality of water that we have. The school district has recently annexed property on Merrill Hills Road, and now, sadly, Buzz Hardy filed a petition on Friday to annex another 39 acres on Merrill Hills. Since the revised boundary was announced just 60 days ago, annexations and applications to annex have increased tenfold. We need to eliminate unnecessary legal fees. We do not need 7 lawyers, some costing as much as $400 an hour and living as far away as Seattle, Washington. We need to follow our own town ordinances and stop spending your tax dollars that have not been budgeted. How can we expect our residents to follow our zoning ordinances and regulations when the town chairwoman publicly states the town board doesn't need to follow the budget or other ordinances because they are 30 years old and no longer apply? If I'm elected chairman, I will follow the state laws and town ordinances. I'm asking for your vote tomorrow so together we can restore respect and dignity to the town. If we work together, we can be successful in Waukesha. The town will no longer be the laughingstock of Waukesha County.
John, the first question is for you. Can I get this microphone on?
You might have to pull it closer to you. Not working for you?
There's a little thing here, but usually there's a... Sorry.
Well, it's a good thing we got our grant money coming for a new system.
Do you want me just, I can speak really loud.
No, you don't have to.
Oh my gosh, it's on. Is it on?
Now you see why you know we need a new system.
John, can everybody hear me? John, the first question is for you, and the question is, do you support a bypass? Why or why not?
Yes, I do support a bypass. Ultimately, the decision rests with the state and the county, since it's a state and county funded project. There is a safety issue out there. Whether it's done on the west bypass that's been approved by the county right now, or an alternative route, the town should be involved in that, but ultimately, it's the decision of the state that's going to matter.
Thank you, John. Angie, we're going to reset the timer. Go ahead, Angie.
I believe improvements are needed to the road, but I do not support having to go through the Pebble Creek waterway. I disagree with my opponent. This is not only a county and state decision, this is most certainly a town of Waukesha decision. Unfortunately, the previous board signed a memorandum of understanding that started this project without the approval of the town board, without even bringing it to the public at all. And so we're dealing with the aftermath of that now. But we should be involved. 50% of this project runs through the town of Waukesha. We need to protect our neighbors and our business owners.
John, we're going to reset the timer.
Can't hear you very well, Angie. You need to speak
No
closer.
kidding, I usually project pretty good.
No. Neither one of you.
No.
Well, we'll have to speak. Can you hear us now? Okay, we'll have to bend forward.
John, can you speak into your mic, please?
Yes.
Can you hear him now?
Yes.
Okay. John, we're going to reset the clock for 1 minute for your rebuttal if you choose.
Regarding environmental protection on the bypass, the state, the DOT, the DNR have been working together, and they've been building roads and highways for many, many years. One of the best examples I can think of is the South Beltline in Madison. Many of us have traveled there. It goes through many, many miles of wetlands. Over 25 years, there's been no degradation of the wetlands whatsoever, and that was built 25 years ago. The technologies for preserving wetlands are far better than they were back when that was built 25 years ago.
Thank you, John. Angie, a 1 minute rebuttal.
The fact is, the town of Waukesha has received over the years many directions from both the DNR and, well, the DNR, the Army Corps, and Waukesha County itself to protect these wetlands. We were given guidelines on development in that area, and now that all seems to be thrown out the window, and it's ready to do a county-based and state-based project in the bypass. So homes are affected, businesses are affected, we need to be involved, we need safety improvements, but they need to be managed with the people that live and work in the area.
Thank you, Angie. John, Angie, the next question is for you to begin with. What is your opinion on commercial development within the town on the corner of Genesee Road and Sunset Drive?
That's a hotly contested topic. That's the referring to the former Walgreens Aldi option that's on that corner. I have certainly thought long and hard about that particular issue over many years as a Plan Commission member prior to being on the board and after. And I've learned a great deal about planning by a change in planner that we had about a year ago. I also attended the city council meeting when they reviewed the annexation of that particular option. And their planning group and their plan commission spoke very highly about keeping intact communities and neighborhoods. And so my position is I feel we need to look very closely at what that would do, what that development on that corner would do to the neighboring homes in that area.
Thank you, Angie. John, go ahead.
The Walgreens Aldi's fits within the current master land use plan that was adopted by the county and approved by the town. There was no adverse effect on transportation in the area. The planners that put together that plan had islands and curb cuts far enough away from any of the houses that there wouldn't be any direct effect on the homes there. And it wouldn't be affected in any way, shape, or form on either of the proposed bypass scenarios. If it fits within the land use and the zoning, I say we build it.
Thank you, John. Angie, you have 1 minute for a rebuttal to the question.
There are indeed issues related to that particular development that was placed before us. And there are significant grade changes in that area. There's also questions as far as the distance for entrances, safety-wise to the corner. And there's certainly questions on transportation going through Ridge Road as a shortcut that would go through a neighborhood. So one must look not only at the direct effects of any particular development, but also how it's going to affect the neighborhood. And in this case, the neighborhood would definitely be negatively affected unless other provisions are put in place. It needs a lot of review before any kind of development could take place there safely.
Thank you, Angie. John, a 1 minute rebuttal.
Well, the Department of Transportation disagrees. They've approved it. They think that the changes that were made to the plan for the various islands and curb cuts and median strips were adequate for safety and traffic concerns.
Thank you, John. The question is for John to begin with. The question is, do you support affordable housing to be built in the town of Waukesha? Go ahead, John.
That's a difficult question because I don't think that we have any multifamily land available in the town that I'm aware of that would facilitate high-density, affordable housing. So no.
Thank you, John. Angie, same question.
There are areas within the town that have city sewer and water. Thank you for the reminder, there are areas within the town that have city sewer and water. And in those areas, potentially if zoning were changed, you could have some, I'm thinking about the Sunset Drive and the apartments there. But otherwise, the town itself does not have zoning or the capacity to have smaller lots because we need a minimum 1 acre lot. And in those cases, I believe that it would be outside of the affordable housing parameters.
Thank you. John, 1 minute rebuttal to the question? No rebuttal, pass. Angie, 1 minute rebuttal? We're good. Okay. The next question, Angie, is how would you address the City of Milwaukee's resolution to provide water to the City of Waukesha, which deals with housing and transportation as it relates to the whole town, including the water service area? Angie, you begin.
It's a very important question and something that we've dealt with for a great deal of time. We were very careful when we were working with the City of Waukesha and considering any kind of inclusion in the water service area to be sure that none of the requirements of the resolution of the City of Milwaukee or any of the water service providers would be applied to the town of Waukesha. It was very important as we weren't part of any kind of discussion. We offered to be part of that discussion that was rebuffed by the city. And so we did obtain, as part of our negotiation with them, a complete removal from any kind of requirements for that contract and the ability to oversee the contract itself and to confirm that information. But we will not be bound by any of those parameters under the current approval.
Thank you, Angie. John?
Well, to start with, it's a non-issue because we're not getting water from the city of Milwaukee. We're getting water from Oak Creek. We're not, the city of Waukesha is, if we were to be included in that water service area. And as mentioned earlier, there is no high-density housing zoning available within the town of Waukesha, so some of those items simply couldn't be met.
Thank you. Angie, 1 minute rebuttal.
Well, never say never. The deal with Oak Creek isn't done. There is simply a letter of intent. The city of Milwaukee is still interested in providing water to the city of Waukesha, so I think we need to significantly understand that they may still come to the dance, and we need to be prepared to protect the town of Waukesha from inclusion in any kind of parameters that would have an adverse effect or an adverse cost to us.
Thank you. John, 1 minute rebuttal. Angie, any type of rebuttal? Okay. John, the next question is, do you support the 5 Diamonds conditional use permit as it relates to the hours of operation, lighting, sound, and application? And would you support to modify any of those conditions, and if so, what conditions?
As I understand the 5 Diamonds conditional use permit, it allows for the lights to be on until 9:30 p.m. There is no sound system there, and my understanding is with over 150,000 people through the gate last year and 5,200 ball games, there were no written violations of their conditional use. There's some controversy over the time that the lights have gone off. I would suggest that a starting time for the last inning, that no inning could be started after a certain time frame. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me to have kids playing ball and suddenly turn off the lights when there's 1 out left. Perhaps a better idea would have been to have a time when an inning couldn't have been started after.
Thank you, John. Angie?
Well, thank you. There are certainly many, many violations of the conditional use in the last year, and I think anybody who gets the Waukesha Freeman has certainly read about most of them. So to say that there weren't any violations, there certainly were, and that was written up in the Freeman many times along with the letter that was sent to the 5 Diamonds attorney. We did not do any kind of ordinance citations last year. It was by choice. We felt it was their first year in operation, and we wanted to give them some time to work out the bugs. I've been told this year that they're saying there couldn't have been any because we didn't give them any kind of penalties. That's a shame that they've looked at it that way. But I support the 5 Diamonds facility. I think it's important that they follow the rules. They have unfortunately used amplification equipment, even though it has been outlawed as far as their conditional use agreement goes. I think that there's a firm way to turn off the lights that should be done as they presented initially. We've never gone in and turned out the lights on them, ever. And anybody who says that we've done that, that's simply untrue. Anytime lights were turned off, they were under the complete control of the owners of that facility.
Thank you. John, 1 minute rebuttal.
Well, if there were violations and no citations were issued, I would suggest that that is a shortcoming of the current board and the current policies that aren't being followed.
Angie, 1 minute rebuttal.
That can certainly be something that's remedied this coming year.
Thank you. Next question is for John to begin with. John, with the threat of multiple annexations, what is your strategy or philosophy on reducing annexations in the town of Waukesha?
Well, in the last 60 days, annexations have gone up tenfold from their previous 6-year average. The reason that they've gone up is because of the misguided decision to limit the water service area. The boundaries that were set in place are not set in stone until this next June, at which point they will finally be set in stone, and anybody outside of those boundaries will not be able to get water. There will be more annexations to come, and the best way to stop annexations would be to promote a new returning to the old water service area and the sewer service area so that we're all protected with a secondary source of water. The water that we currently have, our aquifer, is already contaminated. There are excess levels of arsenic, molybdenum, manganese, and iron in the water, in some cases well beyond the EPA limitations. And that's what the fear is, that's what people are after. They're after a secondary source of water and a secondary source of sanitary services.
Thank you. Angie?
Well, John, I don't know what kind of math you're using, but tenfold increase in annexations. There's been exactly two. One, the school property along with the Regals, and the school pays no taxes to us, has not built a school in the town for years, and in many cases the annexations are just being pushed forward a bit. Many people have parked their land in the town. In the school district it's different, they don't pay any taxes to anybody. So that really makes no difference to us on a tax basis, income basis, either way. Other developers have not annexed into the city because at this time, because it's been in the last few years a poor economy. And so it's much easier to park your undeveloped land at $1.88 a thousand versus almost $10 a thousand. Anybody who's annexing now is somebody that would be annexing in the future, but we will be able to stop that with the boundaries. Contamination, I think we'll take that up under another issue, but that scare tactic is not something that should be part of an annexation discussion. We've lost almost $8 million of property over the years, 800 acres. Any other annexations prior to that were prior to the decision in October of last year. So to represent that we've had a tenfold increase when we've had exactly two, I think is a gross misrepresentation of the facts.
Thank you. John, 1 minute rebuttal.
Since 2007, there's been exactly 11 annexations into the city of Waukesha, totaling 158 acres. In the last 60 days, there's been annexations or annexation applications in excess of 209 acres. That is a tenfold increase over the 6-year average. There are more to come. I am personally aware of over 1,000 acres that will file for annexation if the decision is not reversed.
Thank you, John. Angie, rebuttal?
Certainly like to see that paperwork, John. We have lost 719 acres over the history, so to have suddenly all of this land go is improbable. It needs to be contiguous to the city in order to be taken into the city. Someone simply can't say, because I'm not in the water service area, that I'm not going to be part of the town of Waukesha anymore. They must have continuity, be contiguous, easier to say, and there's not that much land that's contiguous to the city that contains that much land. So it'd be very interesting to see the facts and figures of that and perhaps a map.
Thank you. Angie, the next question will begin with you. The question is, could you tell us what the state law and the local town ordinances are related to budget amendments? And what is your opinion on budget amendments for the town of Waukesha?
Well, that's a hot topic. Budget amendments are something that are required a community to do as they go through their process. We have state law, we have ordinance that guides it, and we also have common sense and history. The history in most communities, including our town, has been that budget amendments are done after the close of year when the books are done. That's been our history here for many, many, many years. We have attempted to do the same thing here in the town of Waukesha. We have been rebuked twice by 2 of our board members. It takes a supermajority of board members to approve a budget amendment. Unfortunately, Supervisors German and Supervisors Fisher have chosen to stop the process of our foundation of closing our books and setting up our new budget by simply refusing to move forward. And the last comment was that we should wait until the new election. So I don't know how they managed to do it all these years the exact same way, but it sure seems like something that's simply something to talk about for an election rather than a true issue.
Thank you. John?
Well, I would strongly disagree. The very attorney that the chairwoman has relied on, an attorney named Lee Tironi from the Wisconsin Towns Association, sent her in an email back on January 4th. Any properly noticed town board meeting by a 2/3 vote of the body can amend the town budget. They can and should do so as needed and as desired. He followed up that communication last month with another letter. When I wrote that prior correspondence, I meant that a budget can be amended at any time of the year. However, a budget is to be amended prior to a line item being exceeded, not after the fact. In fact, the clerk should be checking the town's budget line items to make sure that there is enough money appropriated for each type of bill and only write the check if there is sufficient money. It's very clear, the town ordinances say that no money shall be spent and no obligation for the expenditure of money shall be incurred except in pursuance of the annual appropriation in the adopted budget. And what that means is we can't spend $250,000 on legal fees if there's 90 grand budgeted. If there's a $90,000 budget and we're going over that, the clerk has to stop, she can't write the check, go back to the board and ask the board for an appropriation.
Thank you, John. Angie, a 1-minute rebuttal?
There are many different ways to approve budgets. In some budgets, in some municipalities, you do a very, very detailed line item budget where you get down to FICA taxes, which would be $25 for a particular category. In most communities, although they present the full detailed budget, they simply approve the larger summary budget. And in those cases, I would absolutely agree, and I believe that's what Attorney Turno was referring to. If you have a line item that's $550,000 and you're going to be going over it, you should certainly do an amendment. We had no such thing. We were within budget items in the full areas all the way through. In fact, we put money back in the Treasury. We were under budget overall. There's no reason to think that we took money out that wasn't appropriated.
Thank you, Angie. John, 1-minute rebuttal.
I'm just going to read the town ordinance which parrots section 6590 of the state statutes. No money shall be drawn from the treasury of the town, nor any obligation for the expenditure of money to be incurred, except in pursuance of the annual appropriation of the adopted budget. That means, plain and simple, when we go over a line item, you cannot spend the money, it must be reappropriated. Regarding returning money to the treasury, the only reason that there was money returned to the Treasury this year is because we did not do nearly $300,000 worth of capital improvements, road repairs, ditching, culverts, parks maintenance, etc. That's the only reason that there's money returned to the Treasury. In 2009, we had a $1.6 million reserve fund. As of right now, it's estimated to be $1.4 million. The only reason it's that high is because we did not do $300,000.
Angie, 1-minute rebuttal.
Again, a misrepresentation of the facts. Part of our budget amendment was to move repairs that weren't able to be completed because of the lateness of the year to the 2013 budget. The other items that is referred to as capital are many times long-term capital items, things that we have been addressing over a period of time where the expense isn't going to be incurred until much in the future. And those areas go over into a future year. Even with those being appropriated where they need to go, we were still able to return $126,000 of money to the Treasury. We have prudently reviewed every single dollar that comes in here, and we have a much better idea on a day-to-day basis how each dollar comes in versus the way it was done for years before.
Thank you. John, the next question. What is your opinion on the overall financial status of the town's budget?
Pretty vague.
That's a question. And it doesn't piggyback on your own, but it's asking your opinion on the overall financial status of the town's budget. Finances.
That's a difficult question to answer because the audit hasn't been finished for this year. The fact is that we don't have a complete history of what's happened with the town budget. We have, according to the latest budget amendment numbers that I have, $49,000 from the fire department that wasn't spent, $28,000 from streets and highways, $10,000 for culvert repairs, and many of these numbers are nearly 100% of the entire budget. $30,000 for crack filling, that was the entire amount of the budget for crack filling, we did none of it. Ditching, $56,321 returned to the Treasury. But we didn't do any ditching. The budget for that was $56,500. Sweeping and brush removal, $8,700 returned, but we didn't do any of it. The budget was $10,000. Road repairs, we saved $67,000 on road repairs. The fact is the budget was $195,000. We just didn't do the work. Our current reserve fund at the 1.4 million and change is less than it would have been in at the beginning of 2010 when the current chairwoman took over. In the middle of 2010, we had a $1.6 million reserve fund. If we had not returned $300,000 of unused funds for our infrastructure repairs, our reserve fund would be about $500,000 less than it was when she took over.
Thank you. Angie?
Must be Washington-style accounting there, John. I don't know what document you're reading from, but we certainly did our $30,000 of crack filling, and some of the other numbers that you've represented are simply untrue. Our amount under budget is $295,000 last year. We were moving $123,000 of budget items to the new year, as well as at least $113,000 of capital improvements that are long-term capital expenditures. When you say that the finances aren't done and the audit isn't done, well, that's true. Two board members have kept us from finishing our audit this year, and that's really a shame because we have our annual meeting coming up, and that should have been done and would have been done. What John might not realize is there was a fire truck purchased, and that fire truck came out of our funds. And so, yes, there was a reduction in funds, but not due to anything that the Town of Waukesha Board has done, as newly installed.
Thank you. John, 1 minute rebuttal.
I'm getting all of my facts and figures directly off of the various budget summaries from the various years that I've mentioned. It's all in writing, it's all right here, and from the draft of the budget amendment that was prepared. The reason that the audit isn't finished has nothing to do with the fact that two supervisors did not vote for a budget amendment. If that were the case, our books would still be open for 2010 and 2011, for there was no budget amendment done in 2010 or 2011, and our books are closed. That is, as Supervisor Fisher had mentioned, or Supervisor German, simply an excuse for the failures of the board.
Thank you, John. Angie, 1 minute rebuttal.
I'll still question the date and time of the materials you have. There's definitely errors in them. This information is available to any townsfolk that would like to come in and see it, and to simply be saying things that have no basis in fact makes it very difficult for people to understand who's telling the truth and what the actual figures are. Bottom line is, we need to finish our books, we need to move the town forward, and we need to act like reasonable people to do it. To jump on a budget amendment when it's been done like this for many, many, many years, and we can't close our books, is really a shame.
Next question begins with you. The question is, how would the town of Waukesha handle an open records request without naming any specifics? How would you handle an open records request? And are there any limits to the financial impact to an open records request?
Well, I'm not sure I fully understand the question, but let's tackle the last part of it first. Are there any financial limits to an open records request? And I guess that would be, how much money would you spend on an open records request? There's current legislation in the state legislature right now that would impact how much money a town has to spend, or any community for that matter, has to spend on open records requests. And it's limited, I believe, to the first $50. I think that's the new legislation that's coming out. With regards to how we handle open records requests, if I were chairman, all supervisors would have unrestricted access to unredacted records. That is simply not the case right now. We have supervisors who have made open records requests and had to hire attorneys to try and get that material. They still don't have it. We as a town, you and I, have spent, according to the estimates from Chairwoman Van Scyoc, up to $40,000 for redacting emails. that Supervisor German and Supervisor Fisher have both requested and should have had unrestricted, unredacted access to, but yet we've spent up to $40,000 on that for no good reason. It should have been given to them in email form. We shouldn't have killed 50 years of old growth forest in order to print 16,000 pages of paper for them to review. It should have been given to them in electronic format. I think the open records laws speak very clearly, and they say that we as citizens and of course our supervisors have unrestricted access to the records of the town.
Thank you, John. That wasn't the beeper. I don't know if you were done. That was
something else, yeah.
Angie?
Let's read the question again, because I
The
think...
question is how in the town of Waukesha would you handle an open records request without naming specifics? How would you handle that request? And are there any financial limits to an open records request?
I think the first time you said without naming names.
Yes.
Okay, I thought so. Well, I won't be a name dropper on this one. Yes, we've had some open record requests in the town of Waukesha, and many of them have come from you, John, and I think they were faithfully executed and provided to you by the clerk, as we do each and every day. We did have a very unusual request by a supervisor who asked for a very open dialogue of 6 months of my emails, which counted for about 6,000 emails. It was about 50 a day and 16,000 pages. Those documents were never requested of me personally, and that is documented in the Waukesha Freeman. It immediately came to me, but the first time I saw it through an attorney. I believe that was done for effect, and we're still talking about it right before the election, so I think it had probably its effect. Those boxes sat here unredacted for over a month. They were not reviewed by the individual involved. All those redacted documents by his or attorney request on February 5th have now been redacted by the supervisor's request. Those boxes are done, and the supervisor refuses to pick them up. So whatever the urgency was to spend our town taxpayer money has come to no good, because no one has even looked at the documents. The estimate of $40,000 was at a minute apiece. We were able to find ways to have that be shorter for the attorney to review, and so we estimate that the entire cost to the town will be $20,000. Mr. German had initially indicated, and it was reported in the newspaper, that he would pay for any and all costs related to this. He has now reneged on that request, or on that stipulation.
Thank you. John, 1 minute rebuttal.
The bottom line here is we've got supervisors, 2 of them, both Fisher and German, that have asked for open records. There is absolutely no need for any of this to be redacted. Neither of the supervisors have asked for them to be redacted. As a matter of fact, they have specifically asked for these things not to be redacted. And if we're spending $20,000 on redacting stuff that they should have plain, simple, unrestricted access to, $20,000 is too much. 10 would be too much. 5,000 would be too much. $5 would be too much. It's our tax dollars. There's absolutely no need for any of this nonsense to go on. They should have been given it to them in electronic format with no redaction whatsoever, with no restrictions.
Thank you, John. Angie, rebuttal.
They were given the opportunity to do just that. They refused to come in and do so. One of the supervisors involved has already provided information directly to the media that was to be gone through by a redaction process. He has shown complete disregard to the safety of the town of Waukesha. We have HIPAA laws. We have our legal strategy. There are reasons that we protect ourselves. That needs to be done. When someone has a demonstrated lack of attention to protecting the town of Waukesha, certainly there are things we need to do. But on any and all basis, all documents are available, unredacted, to all of our supervisors. But if they wish to take security documents off these premises, they must be redacted, and they must pay the same as a normal citizen.
Thank you. Angie, the next question is posed to you. The question is, the 288 acres of land that's being discussed by the town of Brookfield for the incorporation process, Do you feel that the town should remain in the town of Waukesha? And what is your opinion on that issue? Angie?
I feel very strongly that that land needs to be protected and needs to be protected strongly. And the town board has acted on that regard through this entire time. That 288 acres that is in question represents approximately $60 million of assessed value. So we have a great stake in that, not only for the people who live there, who chose to live in our environment, our community, with the elected officials they have at our tax rate, but also simply because they chose to live in the town of Waukesha. If that amount of land goes to Brookfield, it is basically a gift to Brookfield. And no matter what they choose to pay us, which at this point they've offered 10 years of taxes, not the 1.2 million that Mr. Marek has indicated, 10 years of taxes, that's approximately $60,000. That's a pittance if somebody were to consider it, considering we get about $60,000 a year, on that. But we put, our taxpayer money, put $700,000 of infrastructure in that area within the last few years. We improved Arcadian Avenue. We were part of that rebuild. We were required to spend the money there. We also did a joint venture with New Berlin and improved Springdale. There's no reason for us to provide these gifts to the town of Brookfield for their aggression on our town lands. Their wish to be a village has nothing to do with the town of Waukesha or the town of Waukesha people. And it is a horrible situation for them to be putting all of us through that. Us as taxpayers have spent almost $120,000 in order to defend that. But there is a lot of money involved. There's personal property rights involved. Think about if somebody had drawn the line around your homes and suddenly said, we're taking you into the city or we're taking you into the town of Brookfield. It's inappropriate and we need to fight it.
Thank you. John?
Well, I have long advocated that we should be focusing on a legislative solution to this. And that, in fact, is exactly what is now happening. I've been talking about that for quite some time. Our two state representatives, Representative Kramer and Representative Craig, are crafting legislation that they have broad support for that would retroactively apply to this situation. And each municipality, each town would have to vote, and each town votes separately. So even if like the town of Brookfield has more residents in their area that's going to be incorporated versus the town of Waukesha, if both didn't vote for it, the incorporation cannot take place. The legislative solution and addressing this with the Department of Administration is the route that we should have been taking. We have a seat at the table with the DOA. That costs us absolutely nothing. Instead of talking to those folks, instead of talking to our legislators and finding a legislative solution, what we have done is simply call our attorneys like we do for every other problem. We don't talk to anybody. All we do is call attorneys and run up $400 an hour legal fees.
Thank you, John. Angie, a 1-minute rebuttal?
Wow, well, completely untrue. First of all, are we thanking you for the legislative solution? Because quite frankly, we've been working on that for a year now. So I'm glad you're aware of it, and yes, that is something that we want to do, not to protect us in this situation, but to make sure that no other municipality, no other group of people should be in this situation in the future. If it indeed gets done and can help us during this event, fabulous. But it is certainly not the only thing that we can do, and it's certainly not something that will probably protect us. It is important that we understand that this is an incorporation. It has never been done before. And the fact is, we need to protect the people that are involved in this area. And legislatively, DOA, we've been working with them from the beginning. We're completely prepared to have the seat at the table and present. And that's where our Washington specialist comes into play. And we're ready to go whenever that moment happens. We'll be ready when they are.
John, 1-minute rebuttal?
Well, a simple question is, if you've been working with the Department of Administration and you've been working with our state representatives on a legislative solution for over a year, how come this is the first time that it's being brought to anybody's attention? It's not been reported in any newspapers. Nobody's talked about it. The first time that I'm aware of that you've had a meeting with any of those folks was last week in this very hall.
Angie, 1 minute rebuttal.
Yeah, you don't always advertise everything that you're working on, especially on a legislative front when people are looking at different options. So just because you, John, aren't aware of something doesn't mean that things aren't happening. We have all through the effort reviewed what needed to be done. We've worked on the legislative front, and in fact the legislative front, now that we're talking about it openly, is something that was drafted by our attorney, and that is pretty well the form in which that it's going forward in the legislative area. But it's important that we understand that there's 3 different prongs to this, and we cannot move forward with the DOA unless the DOA is ready. And at this point, they're not ready to hear the arguments. So we're prepared, but we must work through the statutory requirements. And when they approve the time frame for the public hearing, we will be ready. There's nothing for us to do until then, other than to sit tight with the documents that we have prepared.
John, the next question is, what is the purpose for the City of Waukesha's water utility owning a 2.0 acre tax-exempt parcel located on the east side of Big Bend Road between Merlin Lane and Turner's Pike East, just south of Mill Creek, outside of the new water service area?
Well, if you're referring to the Lathers property land, the purpose of that was to drill shallow aquifers, and that was going to be the city's solution so that they could blend that water with the radium water, tainted water that they currently have in order to meet the EPA guidelines for contamination that they currently have to meet in 2018. That's one of the primary reasons for us to support their application to get a Great Lakes diversion, is so that they don't drill wells and utilize those wells. What we would rather have them do is have a consistent, long-term, sustainable water source, and the only place that you're going to get that is Lake Michigan. We should be supporting them in their efforts to get that water. We should be encouraging them and doing everything we can help so that the water that remains in the aquifer that the town of Waukesha residents and businesses use isn't compromised. And instead what we're doing is we're fighting them in every chance that we have and trying to stop them from getting a Great Lakes diversion. We're not helping with that at all. We've delayed them and delayed them and delayed them. What we should be doing is encouraging them, and that way that wells at the Lathers property aren't going to be used.
Thank you. Angie?
The question had nothing to do with Lathers. Could you read it again, please?
It doesn't have a name on the parcel. It says, what is the purpose for the City of Waukesha water utility owning a 2-acre tax-exempt parcel since 2000 on the east side of Big Bend Road between Merlin Lane and Turner's Pike East, just south of the Mill Creek and outside of the new water service area? It does not have a name of the property owner.
That's not the Lathers property. That's completely on the other side of town. I believe that particular parcel was purchased. The water utility has purchased a number of parcels within the town of Waukesha. The map is there, the large one. In the event that they are unsuccessful with their Lake Michigan diversion, they plan to come and take our shallow aquifer water. Everything that the town board has done is to protect our shallow aquifer water. And for anyone to suggest that all of our actions are not in that keeping is simply mistaken. The reason that the smaller water service area is in place is because it enhances the City of Waukesha's application. The compact does not allow for expansion. And it is very clear in the review that we've gotten that in the event that the entire area is included, not only is it unnecessary, but it will keep the City of Waukesha from being successful. We need them to be successful. We have no demonstrated need, and it shows expansion. Both of those are non-starters when it comes to compact approval.
Thank you. John, 1 minute rebuttal.
A smaller water service area does not help in the application process whatsoever. As a matter of fact, General Manager of the Water Utility, Dan Dukniak, was asked that question specifically. Would a smaller water service area help the application along? And his direct, simple comment was, no, it doesn't help.
Thank you, John. Angie, a 1 minute rebuttal.
I guess I'd prefer to use a resource for decision-making for the town of Waukesha that isn't a paid person from the city of Waukesha water utility. These are the same group of people and the same gentleman that stood in for us 2 years ago and said, just sign this quick document. It doesn't mean much. It's going to be free. It won't cost you anything. You know, just let us know that you're going to be okay with the water service area. Their land use map, which is the colorful one on the side there in yellow, that's the city of Waukesha land use plan. You'll notice that their water service area matches the land use plan in the initial stage. That's because they plan to continue to expand into the town of Waukesha if they have the opportunity. They're going to not say that publicly, but that's been their plan all along. That's why they're unhappy. That's why we are here tonight, quite frankly. It's all about the water.
Thank you. The next question is for Angie. The question is there such a thing as forced annexation, where a town can forcibly take away land from its neighbor without the consent of the town losing the land?
I think this particular question probably comes because there's been misstatements in the paper by Mr. Marek. He refers many times to the 288 acres as an annexation. That is not an annexation, that is an incorporation. It's a completely different set of statutes and rules. And there are provisions in statute to allow municipalities to take some action. It typically doesn't happen for annexation and for incorporation when you're crossing municipal boundaries. In this case, people can be forced to annex if they are among a group of people who wish to do so. Annexations are typically by developers who want to take a piece of property into another community in order to have improved density when you're selling property off. But if there's a group of property owners that wish to go in, if they take 51% of their neighbors, they can, quote, be forced in that situation. But that's quite an unusual situation to happen. In most cases, someone chooses. But one municipality annexing another municipality is a misnomer. That simply can't happen. It would be by incorporation, not by annexation.
Thank you. John?
Well, we agree. There is no such thing as forced annexation unless, of course, it is within a group of properties. If we were in the water service area and you needed water because your well was contaminated, or your septic, like our own town hall here, failed, and you had no secondary suitable source site for a septic system, or your well was contaminated beyond the level of arsenic or molybdenum or manganese, all of which we have in our aquifer right now, in excess of EPA limitations in some areas. At that point, you still can't be forced to annex. The city has put in writing that they are not going to force you to annex if you have the need of water and or sewer service. It's just there's no such thing as forced annexation.
Thank you, John. Angie, 1 minute rebuttal.
John, please show us the document that the city has provided you that gives us a free pass for connecting to water and sewer in the town of Waukesha to the city. Many acres of land have been lost from our community because there is no such document. Every single request is a by the need piece of paper that goes through the Common Council. We've negotiated with the city for over a year. It certainly would have been some control that we would like to have had. In certain circumstances, when the DNR is involved and negotiations have taken place, depending upon the temperament of the Common Council and the mayor, yes, certain people have gotten water and or sewer, but in very rare circumstances. It's certainly not something that happens every day. And if one of us needed water and we were close, we would be asked to be annexed in order to obtain that. And even in some cases when someone is annexed, they don't have a right to have water and sewer.
John?
Well, I'm scurrying and searching for the letter. It dates back to 1987, and the fact is that there is no provision for forced annexation, and there is no rule with the city of Waukesha that's going to make us be annexed into the city if we require water or sanitary services. It's just that simple. There have only been 11 annexations since 2007, and that I have that document here. It's sitting right here, and those annexations were virtually all from developers, and none of them were due to somebody needing water.
Thank you. John, the next question is posed to you. In the event a town resident's well fails, what are the provisions that the town has to rectify that situation? And what is your opinion on multiple wells in an area?
Well, if by a well failing, you're talking about having that well be in excess of the allowable limits for a contaminant, whether that be molybdenum, arsenic, or perhaps some of the runoff from the many farms that we have here, fertilizers and pesticides, or perhaps from any of the tanker trucks or trains that traverse the town, or any of the 7 gas stations that surround the town with many tens of thousands of gasoline sitting in them, or perhaps from Chase Fuel that has 60,000 gallons worth of containers sitting on town property. There's all kinds of contamination that could occur to our wells. And right now, our choices, if we have contamination as it stands today and we're outside the water service area, bottled water is your choice. I don't think that bottled water, holding tanks, and composting toilets are part of the American dream.
Angie?
I hear you, John, say that some of us on the town board have represented that we think that our constituents should use bottled water and composting toilets, and perhaps if they have other property up north they'd like to do that with, I would agree with you, but we've never uttered those words here in the town of Waukesha. It's disrespectful of you to make such a representation of us. There are issues related to water, none of which have been documented in the town of Waukesha general well supply like you're representing. You're scaring people, you're using fear-mongering. It is important not to do such things. It is simply untrue. We have very specific information and documentation with where there are issues, and that's at the fly ash site up in the northwest corner of our community. That's well documented. Some of those folks do have water from the city for that very reason. But all of us in the state and around the country, we're not all on a municipal water supply. You seem to think if we don't join up with the city of Waukesha, we simply will be high and dry and there won't be any options available to us. Well, that doesn't stop at our borders. What about into New Berlin, which is also on the shallow water aquifer, and all of the town of Brookfield? None of those folks are in a secondary water supply area, but nobody's running around trying to do a safety net for them. Why? Because no one is going to be developing property in those communities. They're only looking to put a safety net in the town of Waukesha because that opens up the town of Waukesha to further annexation. If we're out of the water service area, annexation stops. They can no longer supply water and sewer to those more densely populated areas, and the land will be developed in the town of Waukesha, supporting our tax base.
Thank you. Angie, the next question. If the town of Waukesha approves the Great Lakes water application, is there any evidence to suggest town residents would assume financial responsibility? And does blocking the application process benefit town residents?
I feel very strongly that we should support the City of Waukesha application for Lake Michigan diversion. It's very important that they receive it because their Plan B is on the map, and that's a devastating effect on our waterways and shallow water aquifer. The reduced service area will enhance their application, and it's important that we maintain it. If we don't support them, we leave ourselves open. It would be ridiculous for us not to support them. And John's assertions that we've delayed their process is patently untrue. We have been in contact with the DNR the entire time and have been assured that we are in no way limiting their ability to move forward. And anyone can talk to the DNR and make that assessment themselves. It's important for us. We've supported the application. Everything we've done has been in support of that application. And it's important for us to move on given those circumstances.
Thank you. John?
Well, I would disagree, and the city of Waukesha and the DNR have been in the paper many, many times talking about the delays that have been caused by the town of Waukesha. With regards to the amount of poisoning and contamination that's in our aquifer currently, I have all of the test results here for anybody that would like to see them. We have molybdenum, arsenic, and manganese and iron contamination in excess of the allowable EPA limits at the Lathers property, which is certainly not man-caused fly ash dump. In addition to that, I don't live in the city of New Berlin. I'm not drinking their water. I don't own property. I own property there, but they'll take care of their own problems. We have our own problems here. The town of Brookfield is on a completely different aquifer than we are on here. That's all.
Thank you. Angie, 1 minute rebuttal.
The DNR has never been in the paper saying that the town of Waukesha has made any kind of delay. Certainly the propaganda machine that is sometimes referred to as the Waukesha Water Utility, they in fact engage a public relations firm at the tune of almost $10,000 a month. And so yes, they are definitely making statements in the news and getting in newsprint, and anything they can do to enhance their own position versus ours, they're going to do. Again, we're not going to rely on the city of Waukesha water utility representations. We will rely on the DNR, which is exactly what we've done. We have not created any delays. We do not have that kind of level of contamination in any of our wells, or we would have been approved as part of a need process. I've checked with the DNR again. Because of your assertions, Mr. Marek, you're simply scaring people. It's untrue. I ask you to stop.
Thank you. John, the next question is addition to a cyber supervisor. I assume it's a supervisor that's attending the meetings via video. I'm assuming that.
Well, first of all, not only am I opposed to it, but I've got here a legal opinion from Attorney Carol Naraki. She is the General Legal Counsel for the Wisconsin Towns Association. The question was posed to her in one of their monthly newsletters. A board member will be living in Florida for several months this winter. He would like to attend the town board meetings via speakerphone. Is this allowed? And her answer is pretty simple. The state does not appear to prohibit attendance of meetings by speakerphone, Skype, etc. However, board members do not have an inherent right to attend meetings in this fashion. Rather, the town board needs to adopt a local rule or policy as to whether attendance via speakerphone or other means should be allowed. That hasn't happened here. We have no ordinance, we have no rule, it was never voted on in open session. There is nothing that allows this. Furthermore, the League of Wisconsin Municipalities has also weighed in on this. Their take on it is that we are leaving ourselves open to huge liability by allowing this ridiculous computer screen up here and having a supervisor serve the town of Waukesha. And I don't know how you serve a town of Waukesha when you're 4 to 6 months of your year sitting in Texas. They're saying that we leave ourselves open. This is from the legal opinion from the League of Wisconsin Municipalities. Leaving ourselves open that every vote he has taken could be voided. And that perhaps we're even violating open meetings laws. Because the open meetings laws, according to an opinion from our Attorney General J.B. Van Hollen, state that the audience needs to be able to hear and see all of the board members, and that the board members need to be able to see and hear all of the audience members. Anybody that's attended any town board meetings knows that Mike Laska has often faded out of the picture. Most often...
Sorry, John. Angie?
The infamous cyber supervisor scenario, boy, I can't say that 3 times fast, has only occurred because Mr. Laska was kind enough to address John at a board meeting when he was being disruptive. And Mr. Laska asked that John be removed. And since then, John has truly focused on Mr. Laska, who has served this community in the 90s as chairman, and now serves us in his capacity. There is a rule. We can certainly pass an ordinance. It is allowed. It's not by speakerphone, it's by Skype. He sees and hears everything. We see and hear him. And I'm glad that he serves. He brings a foundation of information to the town that we would be devoid of otherwise. He has served on our fire department. He has served as town chair. He is retired and still wishes to serve. And he asked all of us before he ran if it would be okay and if we would approve it. And we said yes. So I consider that a rule and an honor for him to serve with us.
Thank you. John, 1 minute rebuttal.
Well, quite often, we have our own town clerk have to ask, what did he say, whenever he votes? Even she can't hear him. That happens at most meetings, most votes. Mike may have served us in the past. He may have been town chairman in the past. He may have been on the fire department. Those are all wonderful things, and I applaud him for it. However, if he's not living here for 4 to 6 months of the year, he can't serve us. He should be removed from the board immediately, and if I'm elected chairman, I will not allow that to take place.
Angie, 1 minute rebuttal.
Well, you'd be breaking statutes then, John, because the statute allows for people to be in, and in fact, the GAB, the Government Accountability Board, uses this very methodology as they work with the people that are part of their group. So to simply say that you're going to decree, almost like a dictatorship, above and beyond what the statutes require, I think is a little out of hand. The local law does rule, the statutes do rule. Mr. Laska is gone 4 months of the year. He sees and hears everything. He gets things by email just like the rest of the board does. And I'd be happy to say again, Mr. Laska has the best attendance record than any of our supervisors, any of them. He attends more meetings than all of them. He attends all of the voluntary meetings as well. He's engaged, he's involved, he's an asset to the community.
The next question is for Angie to begin with. Angie, it's my understanding that the 5 diamonds, baseball diamonds, needs to have access to the city of Waukesha's water. There's mention that the Regional Planning Commission, the executive director, Kenneth Yunker, and this is a direct quote, I'm assuming, because an area cannot be included in a final water service area without the approval of a governing body of a municipality within that the area is located within, the Regional Planning Commission cannot unilaterally include the 5 Diamonds property in the water service area. Do you believe this is a new position on strength for the town of Waukesha to prevent annexations?
It is absolutely a demonstration that the city and the town have reached a new understanding. That understanding is that we now, with the new water service area, have a firm boundary and a protection from the degradation of the years of annexations that have happened here. It is important for us to note that the town of Waukesha cannot survive if the continuation of annexation, which will increase now that the market is looking stronger, we cannot survive if that tax base continues to be eroded from us. It was a very important 2-year deliberation for us to determine through statutes, through guidance, through the compact, as to how the water service area, which is a brand new development, water service areas are just now being developed, we're one of the first to adopt it, how it will affect development and planning. And we have been on the forefront of understanding how this law is going to be applied. And we finally have the protection we need. The document from Sewer PAC is clear, proof positive, early on in the situation of the importance of the water service area staying what the unanimous board decision was in January of this year.
Thank you, Angie. John?
Annexations have increased in the last 60 days tenfold over the 6-year average. And it's going to continue, and it's going to get worse. At what cost are we providing this border protection? We currently have levels of arsenic, molybdenum, and manganese and iron in excess of the EPA allowable limits. That's in writing. It's right here for anybody that wants to see it. There are failing septic systems in the town. No better example is than where we're sitting right now. Our septic system is shot, and it either needs to be replaced, and the chance of suitable soil, since we're in the lowlands here, is unlikely. So this very town hall will likely be hooked up to the municipal water and sewer service that the chairwoman is denying all of the rest of us, the secondary water source. Our homes are being devalued. There is no question that your home will be rendered worthless if you end up with a holding tank, composting toilet, and bottled water.
Thank you, John. Angie, 1 minute rebuttal.
I'm pretty sure most of the country who doesn't have access to municipal water, finds ways to survive without the composting toilet and bottled water scenario. The DNR has also provided where levels are of concern, reverse osmosis systems and many other options by which we can, in our own homes, filter our water in many different ways. There are people who have municipal water that refuse to drink it because of the amount of chemicals that are put in that water. So there's arguments on both sides of this. Yes, do we need to monitor our water supply? Certainly. But there is absolutely no danger of our water supply being contaminated in the ways that we're being told. And the DNR has confirmed this. Any discussion otherwise. The failing septic system at the town hall, I think we need to go through. And John, we already have an adequate soil test here at town hall, and we have a document from the county that indicates that our septic system is fine.
Thank you. John, rebuttal?
You have a report from the engineering firm that we employ that says the septic system is shot. I have the documentation that says we have levels of contamination in our aquifer that are in excess of EPA allowable limits. That is here for all to see. That is simply a fact.
John, the next question is for you. What is your opinion on developing referendum questions for town residents to vote on?
Well, there's certainly items that should be brought to a referendum. I think the one that we're discussing right now, the water service issue, would have been something that would have warranted a public referendum. It certainly would have warranted public input. There was no public hearing on the water service area and its boundaries. That was never brought to the public. We as residents never had any input on the boundaries of where this thing was going to go. This was done on a Thursday night, drawn on a map with a marker. Literally sat up here at this table, our town supervisors, and drew on a map the new boundaries. That's the type of thing that should have definitely gone to a referendum, should have definitely had some public input. The 164 bypass would be another issue. We should have some public input on that.
Thank you, John. Angie?
Well, I think this, attendance matters. There have certainly been open meetings and public sessions for all to weigh in on the water service area. And it's interesting that the referendum question didn't come up in the city of Waukesha, because they certainly are going to be much more impacted by the water service area and the choice to go to Lake Michigan than we are. No referendum there. In some cases, the referendum is a cop-out because, these are complicated issues. This has taken us 2 years to review. We certainly, at a minimum, would need to have taken those 2 years to present the case to the public so that they could make a good decision on referendum. Had we gone with our very initial meeting of public hearing, everyone said no in the room for the most part. The referendum there was resoundingly no. But we went further and investigated what our options were over the next 2 years. We have discovered many ways to protect ourselves, and we have put together a document to make sure that we're protected in the future. We just need to effect that now. Some of the actions of our supervisors who have visited the town hall or the city hall after our unanimous vote have put some of those things in question. We're working very hard to put our protections back in place and hope to do so shortly.
Thank you. John, 1 minute rebuttal.
Earlier on, when there were public hearings back in 2011, none of those public hearings, none of the input from the residents had included anything about the border and the boundaries that were going to be placed on us with the water service area. There was never any discussion about that. That was all done in some of the 71 closed session meetings. There was no public input on that whatsoever. The unanimous vote on the water service area isn't exactly correct. Brian Fisher and Everett German voted on in support of that only so that they could bring it back for reconsideration. Parliamentary rules require that if you want to bring an issue back for reconsideration, you must be on the prevailing side of the vote. They are not in favor of this new water service area, and the only reason they voted in favor of it so that they could bring it back for reconsideration at a future town board meeting. Regarding whether or not the city took a referendum on the water service area, I guess I don't care. I'm in the town.
Thank you. Angie, 1 minute rebuttal.
The water service area has been up for discussion for a very long period of time. And the fact that we are hearing now from John that 2 of our supervisors participated in meetings with us over a period of time, properly noticed, fully noticed meetings that they attended, and then sat in a public meeting like this where the public was invited to hear our discussion and never said a word that they were voting in favor because of a reconsideration. That's simply disingenuous on someone's part. There was no discussion on their part for any kind of discussion other than support. They voted in agreement.
Thank you. Angie, the next question is for you. Is the entire town of Waukesha in the water service area? And is there any way the town can prevent the city from drilling wells in the proposed area of town of Waukesha?
The map of the water service area is on the smaller easel there, so no, most of the town of Waukesha is not in the water service area. The blue areas are in the water service area. The gray areas represent the city of Waukesha. The white border area, which is the larger portion, is the town of Waukesha proper. None of the town of Waukesha proper is included in the water service area. And it's important that we understand the significance of that. It enhances the application for the water diversion. It's important that we maintain that area so that it's not used for expansion for the city for a number of different reasons. First of all, to enhance the application, and second of all, so that we don't lose our prime commercial corridor to the city, which is in their land use plan.
John?
Can you repeat that question, please?
The question is the entire town of Waukesha in the water service area, and how can you prevent the city from drilling wells in the proposed water service area?
The entire city is not in the water service area any longer. Previously, almost the entire town of the Waukesha was in the, almost in its entirety in the water service area, with the exception of a small piece of land by the Vernon Marsh. With regards to preventing the city from drilling wells on the in-town land, that's very difficult to prevent, and that's one of the reasons we should be encouraging them and helping them to get their Great Lakes diversion. As a matter of fact, the chairwoman was under the impression that the wells were at the Lathers property were capped and unusable, and that simply isn't a fact. Those wells are not abandoned. They are available to be used, and she was made aware of that with the conversation with Dan Dukniak late last month.
Thank you, John. Angie, 1 minute rebuttal.
I'm glad Mr. Dukniak keeps you so up to date on all of my conversations with him. Maybe he should have clarified the conversation a bit. There was an open flowing well on that property. They're all closed. They're not able to be used. I never said that they were abandoned, nor did I represent that the city said that they were abandoned. But we were successful in removing the permits that they had for both test and production wells on that site. And that's why there are no test and production wells on that site at this point in time. That was the very first case that we took on when we were elected in 2010. I believe that we can prevent the city from doing further drilling in the town of Waukesha, but only if we're really smart about how we move forward in the next month, 2 months, 3 months. It's critical time for the town of Waukesha.
John, rebuttal?
Simply not correct. The permits have not been removed. The wells are not abandoned. They could pump water tomorrow if they so chose. Those are the very wells that these test results came from. The test results that, again, keep in mind, our aquifer is currently contaminated with excess levels of the same stuff I've been talking about tonight: arsenic, manganese, molybdenum, and iron. And the fact is that if we don't support them in their quest for Great Lakes water diversion, and we don't have access to that water, and our wells are tested positive for in excess levels, our wells could be abandoned. That's simply a statement of fact. And the same thing goes with your septic tank. If our septic systems become fail, just like the one here at Town Hall, what are we supposed to do?
John, the next question is for you, and there are several questions related to water hookups. So the question is, what is your opinion on water hookups? Are you in favor or against them? Or would you use any, what is your opinion on a failure to water?
Could you read that again?
There's like 4 questions related to water hookup. I'm trying to combine them. It says, are you in favor or against water hookups? And what are your plans if there is a failure? And what is your reasoning for water hookups?
Picking new questions.
How about this one here? Oh, here's a good one. John, you ready for this? What is your opinion and strategy on securing the town's borders related to annexations?
Well, first of all, the city has already provided us with quite a number of protections for the border. They've showed us recently with the denial of the annexation request of the Five Diamonds ballpark that they're not necessarily interested in annexing every piece of land that comes along. The Five Diamonds ballpark was denied annexation just like the Walgreens Aldi site, 2 very prime commercial pieces of property that the city turned down in annexation. The reason they turned them down is because the city is taking a calculator and a pen and they're looking at the cost to provide services for those areas. And the fact is that they can't fiscally, they can't provide services to those pieces of land and to where it makes sense for them to annex them and provide those services in the amount of taxes that they're going to get from them. So they're not necessarily walking around seeing which pieces of land they can grab. One of the other things that the city has done, they said, if we grab any land, we'll give you 20 years of taxes. What they're telling us is, I'm not interested in selling off parcels of the town. What they're saying is, we're going to make it even more unattractive to the city to grab that land. We'll give you 20 years of taxes. They're telling us they're not that interested in it.
Thank you, John. Angie?
Well, some of those things are true. I was at each of the hearings related to the annexations that have taken place over the last 2 years. The denial of the Five Diamonds ballpark had nothing to do with money. It simply had to do with not wanting that bad behavior in their community, and they were quite clear about that. The Walgreens Aldis, the Plan Commission was quite clear, we touched on that earlier. They were very concerned about what that would do to that particular neighborhood because it is part of the fabric of the neighborhood. And John, the 20 years of taxes is something that the town board negotiated as part of this water deal, which the 2 board members who went and visited the city administrator and Dan Dukniak after our official vote had put into play. The city has now said quite clearly since that visit that they are reneging on the 20 years of taxes, and we need to fix that particular problem, and it's unfortunate that somebody interfered with what we already had set up.
Thank you, Angie. John, rebuttal?
Well, they didn't renege on the offer still stands. The problem is that the offer only stands if the town in its entirety reverts to the water service area that was previously in place. That's what the original offer from the city had said, and it's still in place, and they would revert back to it.
Angie, rebuttal? Oops, wait, hold on, Angie. Go ahead, Angie.
The demonstration of the desire of the city of Waukesha to have us fully in the water service area is clear. They have no intention of serving us as homeowners throughout the town. There's no physical way for them to do that. Who would pay for that infrastructure? Who would pay for the tear up and the placement of that? We couldn't afford it. What they have said is they'd be very interested in our commercial corridors. Those commercial corridors are those that we need to keep for our own support and our own tax abatement. It is not something that, even with 20 years of taxes, is worthwhile for us. But at the smaller service area, the city of Waukesha should honor their commitment to us because we never spoke about a specific service area when we were negotiating. This is simply a tool that you're using because they really want us in the water service area, and John does too.
The last question of the evening is Angie. Angie, if you can comment, and John, on the current status of the city of Waukesha's wells and how it impacts the town on a possible drawdown.
Again?
The question is, can you comment on the current status of the city of Waukesha's high-capacity wells and how it would relate to the town of Waukesha drawdowns?
Well, that's a difficult question I'm not answering yet, only because it doesn't talk about if those are deep water wells or if they're shallow aquifer wells. The city has both. And without knowing if it's their, I mean, there's a completely different answer to their deep wells versus their shallow wells.
And the question is not specific, I'm sorry.
Can we choose a different question, or do you want us to answer anyway?
You are
Either
just,
that, or you could give an answer to both if
We
that.
need more time.
yeah.
Okay.
Do you folks mind if they just answer this last question and then we'll do closing comments? Do you mind going just a little bit over, is that okay?
Go for it.
Okay. Angie and John, if you could, Angie had indicated that the status of the city of Waukesha's wells have a differentiate between high capacity, low, and levels. Would you want to comment on that first, Angie?
Sure.
And then John.
Sure, yeah, both of those. The city has deep wells and they have shallow aquifer wells. Their deep sandstone wells are contaminated with radium. And that's a concern for the EPA. They have until the year 2018 to get that settled. They have a number of different ways in which they can do it. They're choosing right now to blend it with shallow aquifer water. That's the same water that is drawn from our wells. And that's the plan in the event that they don't get Lake Michigan water. They're going to put in 27 or so shallow aquifer wells. Those are not sustainable over a long period of time because of the amount of draw. So they have a significant issue with their deep wells because those are dropping. Those can't replenish themselves. They do not have enough shallow aquifer wells in order to provide enough potable water to their citizens. So they have two issues. Those issues are going to become our issues unless they get Lake Michigan water. We need to enhance the application and allow them to get Lake Michigan water to solve the problem for our wells.
Thank you, Angie. John?
Well, we're in agreement again. We need to help them get Great Lakes diversion water. Both their deep aquifer wells and the shallow wells are being drawn down. In some cases, as much as 800 feet. The deep aquifer wells have dropped, and that is one of the reasons that they have the radium problem, is because the more water you draw out, the more concentrated the radium becomes. So that is the primary reason we need to focus on getting them their Great Lakes application diversion approved.
Thank you. Angie, any rebuttal?
No.
John, any rebuttal? Okay, a 1-minute closing statement. And since Angie began, John, if you would end the session with your 1-minute closing statement.
Well, once again, in closing, I'd like to thank you all for being here and being engaged. I believe there is a better day in front of us. We need to begin to repair the relationships with our neighboring communities. We're not North and South Korea. The folks that live, in some cases, right across the street from us have children in the same schools. We shop at the same stores. We attend the same churches. I pledge to end the bickering, the infighting, and the dysfunction that exists here in this hall on Thursday nights. I pledge to work to secure a safe secondary source of water and sanitary services while protecting the boundaries of the town. As a new board is installed, I pledge that we follow the budget that you electors approve. We will require in-person attendance by our elected officials. We will return to transparency with open meetings. We will address the needs of the town, spending your tax dollars on roads and public safety. And we'll work towards a common goal of making the town of Waukesha the lowest tax community in the state. I'm John Marek, and I'm asking for your vote tomorrow.
Thank you, John. Angie?
It's still all about the water. It was in 2010, it is today. It is about the survival of the town of Waukesha. It is not about infighting, it is not about bickering, it is not about any of the artificial things that have come up and been created for the change of leadership here at the town of Waukesha. The town of Waukesha, for the first time in history, rememberable history, if that's a word, is stood up for itself, has actually made a name for itself, has actually now put itself in a position where we are part of the community and simply not taken advantage of. And that is why this particular race has drawn such close attention. We have good relationships with our other communities. A call from Mayor Ponto is evidence of a relationship that we've developed over time. Same with the city of Waukesha. There are issues related to the water utility area or the water service area. We need to protect the town. That's what I've done.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, we want to thank you all for coming. We hope you all vote tomorrow. And if you please, no matter what your affiliation is, for Angie and John, please give them a round of applause for their time.